A strategic planning meeting for Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Let the record show that everyone, all members are present with the exception of Alderman Gonzalez, who is excused. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous committee meeting. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
Second by Alderman Robinson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Ayes have it, and motion carried. We have no unfinished business, but we do have a new referral here. And so I've invited, open presentations on the splash park concept for war vets. It's something that I've wanted to do and bring Vortex in to meet and greet the Common Council. Jason, would you just unmute that for a second, please? Because I don't think they can hear me. Okay. All right, so I'm doing the introduction, and you guys, I forgot that I muted the computer. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this evening I have invited Vortex to come before the Common Council. I met with Kathleen and Joe with the mayor on Friday, because we knew the mayor was not going to be here this evening, and I wanted the mayor to get a good understanding of what they represent, what services they can provide us as we move forward in the design process, and ultimately the potential for cost savings opportunities, which I think are huge to go along with their reputation. So at this time, I'll just quickly go around the room here, and I would also ask if anyone has any questions, I think it's easier, please remember to try to speak into your microphone so the people on Zoom can hear your questions. Tonight we have Alderman Panis, Alderman Witt, Alderman Anastasia, Alderman Robinson, Alderwoman McCall, and myself. And we welcome Vortex to the Olean Common Council.
Thank you very much, John. Kat and I both appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Vortex and what we can do to help the city and providing them with a destination flatbed. So I know Kat's going to pull up the presentation, and we'll let you answer questions, whether you want to wait till the end or leave questions during the presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Can you guys just confirm you see my screen okay? Everything's good?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So let us skip those parts. John already made the introduction, so let's dive right in. So today, the topic of the presentation is to talk about the benefits of adding a splash pad to your community. We'll look at the benefits of also the journey. We'll also look at the journey, the customer journey, so from A to Z. And we'll also talk about who we're planning for. We'll review a case study. I've got good numbers, I've got good information that Joe and I want to share with you. And the last point is we'll talk about some key notions to consider when selecting a manufacturer that will help you achieve your dream splash pad. So what are the benefits of having a splash pad in your community? So we'll talk about the social benefits and also the economical benefits. So the benefits are clear. You have a sustainable solution, it's an accessible and inclusive play space, it promotes the user development, improves communities, it's an innovative landscape, and it's adapted to the community needs. And I don't know if you guys know that, but splash pads have been consistently ranked in the top 3 desired amenities for the past 10 years. So splash pads are popular, they're here to stay. So in terms of building social capital, what we mean by that is we improve social structure as well as values and behaviors. So when you're building social capital, it means different things at different levels, really. So when you're talking about the individual level, you're building social capital and it involves your action and also the intention of the individual. So when you're talking about building social capital at the society level, it relates to social structure and also social organization. So really, social capital relates to the ways in which humans interact and work together, but also speaks to promoting healthy communities by maintaining social well-being for the people in the community. Now, there's a lot of studies that are showing that many economic benefits generated by having a splash pad in your community. So, in a nutshell, we see increase in property values, and of course, the increase of tax revenues. But there's also an attractiveness when it comes to new home buyers and also promotes tourism. So, and according to according to conservation tools, there you go, me to say it that are pre-COVID studies were showing a minimum of 5% increase in property value for houses within 500 feet from the park. So, and this is a pretty conservative estimate. So there's a real potential for additional revenue. So a splash pad lit up with colorful LEDs at night can create a beautiful visual for families. It can also extend the stay in the park. So you turn a family-oriented space by day to a Friday night event for teens or even a Saturday date night for adults. So we see this a lot in the commercial sector, adding LED lights. It really brings that immersive type of experience. There's also the cabanas here that you can add. In the commercial sector, we see cabanas rented for $25 to $50 a day. So it's also a great revenue generator. As you can see here, we've got concession truck, or food truck, or even concessions. This is a good way for the community to inject revenue in the community. So now we'll talk about the process. We'll talk about the journey. From breaking down the cost. So what you see here on your screen is everything that we need to take into consideration when we're planning a splash pad. So what are the play features like? What's the type of water management? Are we including installation? Will we provide the concrete, surfacing, and so on and so forth? So as we go and break down the cost, we really get a good sense of the scope of the project, and it really helps us being a little bit more efficient and really deliver that dream splash pad that you guys are looking to have. So when we talk about the end-to-end process, so we'll start with what we call the discovery conversation. So during that discovery conversation, we get an overall scope of your project like we just saw before, and we get a good understanding of your splash pad budget. While we're having that conversation, we also talk about inspiration. We want to understand what are your needs, what you're looking for. Are you looking for something that's very themed? Are you looking for specific narratives? So the inspiration really helps us go and move towards the design phase. But before we get to the design phase, we need to talk about technical stuff. So the technical review is a major part of the process. We need water, we need electricity, and we need basic information about the site, so this can be translated to your ideal design. So if you're working with an engineer firm, for example, that's where we would sit down with them and with the different stakeholders and really understand the scope and what's needed and get ready to do a design. So we have the inspiration, we understand the objectives, we understand the intent, we've got the technical information, and now we're going to design a nice footprint, a nice spray zone, a 3D render, and then we're going also with what we call piping and electrical schematic. So that piping and electrical schematic, it's a very technical document. It's, we call it the recipe to do the installation for the splash pad. So it's important information, and that schematic is sent to the Department of Health for approval. Once this is done, then we go ahead and we go through your procurement process, and then we can start getting the manufacturing moving. We need to have a clear understanding of the calendar, the dates that you want the splash pad to be installed by, for example. We do the installation if it's needed, and also when we have the water recirculated system, we'll see a little bit later on what it entails. Then we also do the startup. Once everything is done, we can also add some training to it. We'll talk to you, we'll want to have your feedback, and also very important, we'll be there to celebrate with you and celebrate with the community once the splash pad is installed. So far so good? No questions? All good?
So far, so good, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the scenario number one, which is the supply and installation through NPP. And I wanted to show you a timeline so we can understand a little bit the different dates and different milestones that we have for your splash pad. So, let's say, for example, in February, we had the discovery conversation, and we talked about the installation. We have a good understanding of what the needs are. The next step would be end of March, talking about those technical reviews. We talked about the water, electricity, the room available for the water management system. So that would take us until the end of March. Now, in April, we would go through design. We would also do that schematic that we talked about, send it to the Department of Health for approval. We're guessing 2 to 6 weeks. Sometimes they're really fast, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but that's a good average. Now, once this is done, you say, okay, let's go Vortex, let's go Joe, we want to go ahead with you guys. Then we go through NPP, which is the National Purchasing Program. We can evaluate between 16 to 20 weeks lead time in terms of manufacturing, which brings us to an installation around October 2022 for a grand opening of May 2023. So that's your first scenario. Now, I want to show you an alternative scenario, but before we go to the alternative scenario, let me talk to you a little bit about the benefits of going through an NPP program. So going through an NPP program, and I think, Joe, maybe you want to jump in here if you want to address the benefits of that program.
Just for some of you that don't know, we're talking about co-op purchasing program, and we've done it with a few of the municipalities in the west of the New York area on this, and it just depends on the municipality. But basically, what the program allows you to do is they're allowed to incorporate not only materials, but the installation as well into the package, okay? And because we're able to do that, we're allowing you an additional setup where we can provide 5% off on the products as well as 5% off on installation, which is basically a nice savings to you. And we found it very helpful to a lot of the municipalities and working with the savings, but in the long run on the installation, because basically it's a lot cheaper to do this way than to go out to bid. Adding going out to bid is going to add a lot of additional costs. So, okay, I don't know if there's anything else to say on that, but.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of the benefits of going through that co-op purchasing. We also have an alternative scenario where you would do the supply and installation through a bid process. So if we were to do that, so if your community were to do that, so again, we have the same discovery conversation, we figure, we understand your needs, we understand the narrative. at the end of March, technical review, which is the same thing as the previous scenario that we talked about. But then we have a little bit more lead time added for the bid scenario. So design could be done in around 3 weeks. Going to bid and awarding the contract is 4 to 6 weeks. Again, we have to go through the Department of Health between 2 and 4 weeks. So that brings us to a January, February 2023 manufacturing process. So we're still talking about 16 to 20 weeks. And that brings us to April 2023 installation. I put April, but I think it's more May or June because we're seeing longer lead times lately. And this is for a summer 2023 opening. Now, there's a little bit of a drawback when you guys, when we're going through a bid, we're going to face a price increase. With the situation right now as it is in the world, we know price increase will be coming up. Those are prime dates, so to be open by Memorial Day or to be open in May or June, those are prime dates for manufacture, but those are also prime dates in terms of installation. And we also wanted to point out that there's also an added margin on the installation. So an installer, a general contractor, will add between 15 to 20% to the product. And we also are not 100% sure of the quality of the installation if we go through a low bid process. Joe, I don't know if you have anything to add to this one?
No, but we have several installers that we have worked with, Vortex certified in the area, that have done a number of projects. So, it does make it nice when you have a contractor that knows what they're doing. It's not to say that there are contractors out there that would be able to do this, but just from our standpoint, we feel comfortable with someone that's been in the factory, knows our product, knows how to install.
Thank you, Joe. So now we'll talk about who we're planning for, because I think this is equally important to understand who we're planning for. So we're planning funds for all users of all ages and also all abilities. So having an accessible and inclusive splash pad, it's always a must. So to really illustrate the difference between an accessible splash pad and an inclusive splash pad, we have a picture of the same feature on different contexts. So having an accessible play space will really remove the physical barriers to allow access to it. So accessible splash pads are good for the individual growth. So adding a ramp, adding accessible bathrooms, making sure there's enough room in between features to turn and to maneuver a wheelchair, for example. This is a good example of a splash pad that's accessible. Now, an inclusive splash pad will remove the social barriers to allow the participant or to allow the users interaction between themselves. So an inclusive splash pad is good for the community growth, it's multi-generational, and it really brings the community together. So when we design a splash pad, we go through the spectrum of play experiences. So from contemplative play, which can mimic rivers and streams, that really brings you to a place where you feel safe, to tactile play, well, you're discovering the wonders of water through touching and playing with different water texture. There's also some sensory play that supports the cognitive growth as well as the fine and the gross motor skills. So right here in the middle, you have a little bit of the imaginative play, or what we call the pretend play. So it's fun, discovering. It's also acting out the story. It's part of the narrative. So you're not reading the story to your child anymore. Your child is creating their own storyline. And then you go to the other spectrum, where it is immersive, it's competitive, it's way you can develop your self-confidence and your risk management skills. So, for example, we see kids often that they want to go under that big bucket, but because their friends are going also, but they're not too sure if they want to go, they don't want to be left out. So that's risky play for your kids, and it's good for them to experience this and actually promote it with the elevation structure. So there's no experience that's better than the other one. It's really a matter of what your objectives are and also including a good variety of those events. Now I want to walk you through the concept of a splash pad. So what you see here, the blue dot that you see here, it's actually what we call the wet zone or the active zone. That's where the play features are going to be. Now, if you look at the white circle, that's what we call the apron or the buffer zone. So it's your spray-free area. And then you've got your circulating and seating zone. It's where you want to make sure you keep your eyes on your children, but you don't want necessarily to be part of the action. We also see sitting walls that are being put in the circulation and sitting zone. Passive spaces are really important. We need to account for shade structures. We talked about cabanas earlier, benches, picnic tables, and all of that. There's also toilets and change room, accessible of course, and we need to account for that water management system. So in your case, we're talking about a bigger splash pad, so we need to have a water management system that uses recycled water, and that takes a little bit of a bigger footprint. We also need to take into consideration parking. So we talked about the water management system. We have three types of water management systems. So we've got the flow-through system, which really uses potable water. We've got the recirculated system that recycles and disinfects the water. This is a closed circuit system. And we also have a repurposed system. So in this case, we're going to talk about a recirculated system, or a water quality management system as we call it. So this is a modular system. So it's a typical room layout that would be housing that modular system. Depending on the size of the water recirculated system, we can think about 15 by 15 as a footprint. So that's a top view of that room. And it's a really good illustration because it really positions each component. So we have the sound filter, we have the manifold, but we also need to take into account the eye washing station, for example. So that's not done through Vortex, that would be done through an engineering firm that would be involved in the project. You can see here we've got the muriatic acid, so the above-ground chemical containers. It could be either inside the building or outside the building. That's to be determined when we have the technical review meeting. And we also have the water containment system. We have the grate trap, the rain diverter. So those are all components that are part of that modular recirculated system. We talked about a schematic earlier, so the piping and electrical schematic. So this is an example of what you would get. We would use that to send it back to the Department of Health. And this concept of cost, it is part of our package with the rendering and also the footprint that we call the spray zone. Now, I've isolated a case study, so John, you let me know if we still have time and if you guys want us to go through this case study. There's some good compiling information that we wanted to share with you.
Please, sure. Please go ahead.
Good to go? Perfect. All right, so this is space asphalt parking lot. So the splash pad is the sole revenue source for the park. So I really like this picture because it really puts things into context. And as you can see here, we have a little bit of everything that we talked about. So we've got shade structures, we've got picnic tables, and there's also some amenities here, a little bit here and there, some parks right here. So the pavilion that you see here, the picnic pavilion, is used for party rentals. So it's a good source of revenue generating. So it's available to rent. I think it's a block of 2 hours on Mondays, where the splash pad is close to the public. So they're renting this space. So in 2019, they had a whopping 220 private party rentals for different activities. So through those rentals, they generated a revenue of over $16,000. So that's pretty good for 1 year on a return for investment, and that could average, on a normal year between $15,000 to $30,000 added revenue. So it's also important to calculate the attendance. So in Georgia, it was calculated on a season of 21 weeks. So the average was about 250 visitors a day weekly, and 450 per day on the weekends. So they had a total of about 30 weeks. That's a lot of people. And when the city decided on their admission fee, they had different options they wanted to explore, and they did a survey with the resident, and that's what they came up with. So they have a daily rates of, for residents $2, and the non-resident fees are $3. So different rates. It can also be combined with the rental of pavilion for $50 to $75. If you have cabanas, you can also rent those cabanas. So it's a big possibility to generate that revenue. So just to give you an overall great example of the community, amenity, when it's properly planned with a good revenue strategy. So the revenue is over $17,000. The revenue net is over $60,000, and the annual maintenance cost is about $5,000. So it's a lot of numbers, and I will be sharing this presentation with you as well. But it's just to show you that having a splash pad, adding an elevation, it could really be a revenue generating for your community. So this is our last segment. In our last segment, we wanted to talk to you about how to ensure that a successful splash pad. So, Joe?
Just to give you some background on myself, we've been, our firm has been representing Vortex since 2015, so 7 years that they represent Vortex. We have projects within New York State well over 250, and worldwide, Vortex does over 8,000 splash pads. That could be splash pads, elevation, water slides, so we have well over 8,000. And we've done numerous projects throughout the New York area. I don't know if you're familiar with Bright Park, the city of Dunkirk. We did a project for them a few years back. We did a piece of plate with a pitcher's splash pad last year. So we've done a lot of projects. Look in the background where I'm talking. This is a project we did to kind of West Seneca over at Veterans Park, right near Town Hall. So we've got a lot of projects that we've done within the Western Corridor that if you need to, you want to go see, please do. A big project we did was the town of Amherst at Clearfield Nature Center. We did a big elevation for them. That was over a $300,000 project. So we have a lot of And a little background, we've been in the recreation field since 1958, our family. As I mentioned to you, we've been representing work since 2015. And we're a little, I would say we're experts in inclusive design, not only on splash pads, but on playgrounds as well. And the reason I say that is because I am a child with special needs, and now, since that child, he's a young man, he's 26 years old. So we understand that population designed for splash pads as well as playgrounds. So we have a lot of experience. The other factor too is we have the necessary installers, the certified installers in this area as well. This is a project we did. This is over in Rockford, the town of Sweden. There's a splash pad that we put in with an inclusive playground. We did the splash pad first, and then we did the inclusive playground. But the supervisor for the town said it was the best thing they did was put in the splash pad. It is very popular. It's just what can happen for the community by putting in a amenity like this. You will find out that how popular they are, and how well they do.
Thank you, Joe. So you've heard us say splash pads and elevations. So splash pads are the features for zero depth installation. They're filled with clean valley. We also have water slides in our solution portfolio. And finally, when we talk about elevations, this is it. It's our 360-degree activity tower module, again for all ages and all abilities. At Vortex, we use only the best of materials in the market. So our features are made out of stainless steel, and the nozzles are made out of brass, just to name a few. We are committed to providing quality products and quality services that will meet or exceed our customers' expectation. And we comply with the most common standard and certifications in the industry. So our promise to you is we're responsive. So if you have questions, we'll give you answers. References, like Joe mentioned, don't take our word for it. Just go out there and ask other communities. And reliable. So we'll help you. We'll be there with you every step of the way to make your dream splash pad come true. And that's it for us tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that rendering right there would look awesome in War Vets Park, but I'm biased. So at this time, I will open up questions to the Common Council. Would anyone have questions? Alderman Witt.
Yes, hi, I'm Linda, and I'm looking forward to having a splash pad. My question is, have you been to Vortex Park?
Where?
To Vortex Park, where we're planning on putting the splash pad?
No, I have not been on site yet, no.
Okay.
No, I went to the other part, and I forget the name of it, with the F front.
Oh, Fran
Rancho?
Yes,
Right.
that's the one I originally went to that I met with Bob.
Right,
And Park and Rec.
that's good. My question is, could you show us, because these are beautiful, but I think they're much larger than what we're going to have at War Vets. Could you show us something, and I'm not even sure what the dimensions at War Vets are, but we have an existing pool. We have a little wading pool next to it. We also have the capabilities of having locker rooms. They're already existing. We have changing areas. We have restrooms. And our facility, we just did over a $3 million upgrade. So we do have good things in place. The downside is some of our mechanicals under our pool are 45 years old. So that's, we're going to come into issues there. So I guess my question is, with all the water filtering and all the mechanical things, I'm just wondering where you would put those over there. Would you have to add on to the existing building? And I'm just wondering size-wise what we would have, because as I said, these are beautiful, but I don't see ours being 70,000 so many square feet.
And I'm sorry, I have to think at that. I did see Veterans Park. I did go to the pool facility, so I was there.
Okay.
I guess the question would be, I mean, that is something that, as far as the size goes, would be determined by you guys. How big do you want this thing to be? As far as mechanical, we were thinking the mechanical could go outside, somewhere in the building. I don't know, it would be south of the pool area where the splash pad elevation would be. It would be a separate entity from the pool. It would have anything to do with the pool.
Right. And keep in mind, we're in western New York, so our summers are not that long, and many times we have wet summers. So I just think, I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yes.
But in size and in how often it's going to be used. I'd love to see it used every day, you know, from early summer right into early fall. But I just would like those numbers as far as the footage we're going to be using. And, you know, we're thinking of 1.5 million. I'm thinking those are a little more expensive than that.
Well, it is a good comment, and thank you for that. So we've done splash pads that were 500 square feet, and we've done splash pads that were 10,000 square feet. Like Joe mentioned, we need to understand the site that we need to work with, which is basically a canvas for us, right? So understanding, we have a good understanding of your budget, but we need to go through that technical review to understand all of this. We could downsize it, we can add lights, we can make it bigger, we can have a different shape. Those are just examples. Once we go through that technical review site, we will have a little bit more information and we'll understand a little bit more what we have to work with. We wanted to show you the greatest that we have in terms of the project was an inspiration from a project called West Bloomfield, and that was the intent today, but we can certainly revise the square footage if need be.
One last question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just recently at a New York State Conference of Mayor, and a lot of municipalities, and maybe you could give us your opinion, have removed their pools and gone to splash pads because of the liability. Do you see that as a potential for our project?
The pool, what I've seen, honestly, what I've seen in the past, obviously 2 to 3 years, is that unfortunately, because it is unfortunate when the pool is closing, there's a lifeguard issue, so they're a little bit more rare, and then maintaining your pool can get pretty expensive. So I've seen a lot of communities what they do is they either close their pool or they keep it open, and they just add a splash pad. That's going to be a little bit more independent than the pool. So if there's a lifeguard shortage, if the pool needs some maintenance, that's okay. Because your splash pad is going to be independent, you're still able to offer this to the community. With having a bar, for example, which will bring a splash pad on demand. If we have days where it's really nice, really warm, and we want to extend the hours of operation, it can easily be done. On the opposite side, if you have a couple of days where it's really raining and it's a little bit more chilly, then the splash pad is simply closed, and even if you press on the button, it's not going to be activated.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is. It does. Thank
Hey,
you.
one thing, please. We worked with the village of Sloan, out in Chippewa. They had a wading pool. It was going to cost them over $300,000 to fix this wading pool. And we were able to give them a splash pad that was flat, and it turned out nice. It's Breakfast Park in the village of Sloan. So, it all depends. Now, I'm working with an engineering firm, they're looking to put in a pool and a splash pad for the community. So it just depends. And the other, you're finding, like, Kathleen had mentioned, is getting lifeguards. That's a big issue with a lot of municipalities. So that's one thing nice about splash pad. You don't need a lifeguard.
Hey, I've got a quick follow-up to that. So the design that we've kind of been, referencing, the West Bloomfield design, in the conversations that we've had and kind of the scope of area which I presented to the Common Council a few weeks back, would that concept fit into the area which we've been kind of eyeballing, which is south of the pool?
I guess, God, we have to know the dimensions.
Right.
I know you had a design.
Yep.
That one could fine. I just don't know.
We've got to go through the entire process. So, also kind of give us an idea before you've got to go through the entire process and the rendering for us to understand the cost.
Sure.
Correct?
That's correct. And we don't charge for that.
Yeah.
That service, so.
Right. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, Kate.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I was just going to say it's a hand-in-hand process, and like we saw in the beginning, we need to understand the site that we need to work with, technically what we need to deal with, and then once everything is understood, that's when we would do the proposal. That's when we would do the 3D rendering. That will include, the site, the layout, what we call the spray zone, just to make sure the canvas is according to your need in terms of size, in terms of plane value, in terms of features as well, that's really answering your needs. And with that, we're going to be able to really confirm a budget for you.
Okay, very good. Other questions? Alderman Anastasia?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I saw that you were mentioning LED lights. I think it's a good idea to put that in there because it would make it look more aesthetic to the community and maybe some other outdoor type lighting in case we get some hot, humid summer nights and we decide to keep the splash pad open until 11 o'clock. So
Yes, sir.
I think we should make sure there's a proper lighting and not like the LED ones.
Well, we can certainly incorporate that into the design.
All right, other questions? Alderman Robinson?
Not a question, it was more of a comment. When I think about Western New York and, having a pool, motorcycle, snowmobiles, stuff like that, you're not gonna have it year round. It doesn't exist in this area. So with that, to counter that, the pool itself, I've thought about it and, Alderman Witt brought up the fact that, the pool, is already getting old. I thought about suggesting maybe getting rid of it altogether. Then we don't have to worry about the lifeguard and all the other liabilities and things of that nature, and then make the park bigger. That gives us more square footage in the whole 9 yards, and then make it a bigger investment. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Robinson. Anyone else? Alderwoman McCall?
Actually, my thought is that the existing structure that is there is pretty old and decrepit in terms of the building, and I know we rent it out. My thought would be to do away with that and to look to utilize something else that we would rent through one of those spaces, because everybody's been in the structure there, and I don't think it's been updated.
You talking about the pavilion?
The building itself, that pavilion.
The pavilion or the rec center?
No, not the rec center.
Not the rec center.
No,
The
but
pavilion.
the pavilion itself,
Yeah.
when thinking about it, because when we look at space-wise, it does seem like that would be in the way.
Yeah, so I just off my recollection, and Linda, you and I might have been the only ones here at the time. Was it 3 years ago, maybe we put $50,000 or $60,000 into the pavilion? I know we put a new roof on it. We
And
did.
I think we did some floor work.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that's super, right, but it gave it a facelift. We should take a tour of the facility, really in its entirety. And I do know, I mean, to Alderman Robinson's point, to Alderman Esteta, like, we've all, Linda, we're all aware, and in the context, within that $1.5 million, we do have funding in that proposal that would bring some new life and new cement work, new concrete work to the pool. Whether or not it behooves us to do away with that, if we could try to quantify the potential cost savings of doing away with the pool, and then see, well, then how, to Vernon's point, could we go a little bigger than if we eliminated the pool, absorb the cost savings there annually, and really build something, So just something I think we should look into further. Alderman Witt?
Yeah, and Vernon touched on a good point, because many of the municipalities that we were part of, they did eliminate their pools, partly for the same reason we have cut back on our hours. We don't have lifeguards. They have 2 other places in town they can go, and they get perks. They don't get that in the city. So the lifeguards, the equipment underneath the motor, I talked to Chris Schwery, and he said it's between 43 and 45 years old. So that's bound to go soon. So I'm just thinking, cost-wise, liability-wise, we've been sued in the past for someone tripping on the diving board. We took it out. And I think that's the way municipalities are going. And I just think this is safer, and we put more in there. I talked to John about, like the weekends or evenings, like Friday night or Saturday nights. In the past, we used to have pool parties. And I think that would be a perfect time for young teens or even couples to come and just relax, not let the kids all have all the fun. And maybe at some point, be able to serve alcohol there and have bands. Really enjoy the summer. There's nothing wrong with parents getting out once in a while and having fun. So I just think there's so much potential, but I think we need to look past our pool and decide what to do with it on purely an economical determination of cost versus what we're getting out of it. And I think it's given us, its life's, it's served us well. I just think maybe we need to go in a different direction, like you had suggested.
Okay, well, we can do some research on that. I would be very interested to see. Anybody else? Well, I want to thank Joe and Kat for attending here tonight, and we appreciate your time, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so any other presentations tonight?
Now, my gentleman is booked, actually, he's gonna, either this week or next week, be in Ellicottville, and he has worked with this company,
Okay.
just so you know.
Okay.
And at some point, if you did want him to come down, that'd be fine, but right now, he's booked.
Okay.
So can I ask to John's point earlier, was he more the construction end versus the kind of idea person? Because my understanding now is that Vortex is the overall kind of instruction piece, and that Denzak would be actually more of kind of putting in design stuff.
So, just to give you an idea, Vortex is the manufacturer. They make all of the pieces. They're a Canadian company, and Denzak is the region, like they're the rep, right? They're in Western New York. They would be the procurement individual piece of it. The other side of it, where the technician comes in, is they talked about partnering with an engineering firm. So that engineering firm is the one that would be able to give them all of the site specifics, water pressure, elevation, dimensions, electricity, all the stuff that is way too technical. And so that, those are companies, right now, really the business that I've reached out to, just, you know, again, to ask them for if they would be interested in their services. It's a engineering firm that the city of Olean's used quite a bit in the past called Clark Patterson Lee. And so that is the individual. So as far as the design work goes, the design work comes from Vortex, and it's free. They'll do all of the work, even if we decide not to buy their product. They will put together all of the renderings, the design concept, even down to what the technical specs are, and kind of give them to us, and we'll look at the price tag, and we'll look at the renderings, and ultimately make the decision. I did want to follow up and just say, you know, they talked about a national purchasing program, and as an opportunity to possibly save some more money. Not only, you know, key benefit to that is better pricing and also a quicker turnaround, but I want to go through Jack. It's a bunch of paperwork that I want to have him read through and make sure that that would be eligible under New York State procurement guidelines and you know, and everything like that. So I want to make sure that, you know, everything is done by the book, and I've talked to Bill about this too. So we want to make sure to go through all of that. If that's an option for us, or if we have to potentially bid, you know, that's another option. But sometimes that you go down that path, and then, you know, a contractor buys the material, tax on 10%, you know, upcharge to, you know, what do you want to call it, a markup, when they buy the materials, and then charge for the installation. So whatever ultimately provides a cost savings, but we have some time to do that and find out more about that program. They refer to it as like a co-op program, or a purchase, national NPP, national purchasing program. So yeah, sorry, that was a long answer. Other questions? Any other comments? Okay. All right, thank you very much for your time then. And so, any committee reports, Tiffany?
So where's this go from here, John? I mean,
Okay.
you guys want this by Memorial Day of next year, or, you know, we keep on referring week by week. Where's this going from here?
Well, so what are the next steps? Well, I think the next steps are we have to get a proposal from an engineering firm. We don't have Bob anymore, right? At least Bob's going to be Bob Ring will be kind of part-time. So we need to get that engineering firm, and so they can start getting the technical specs to this firm. So they can start working on design and build us a proposal with costs attached to it. So that's really the next steps. When Bill comes back from vacation, I plan on sitting down with him, as well as the Clark Patterson Lee firm, and ask what the next steps are there. Get a request for a proposal, a cost from them, and the council. We've already set aside money. We can appropriate, we could approve that contract, and then he could, you know, that Clark Patterson Lee could start moving forward on all the technical side. And, you know, I think our goal should be Memorial Day 2023, but I also want to ensure that, because we're using ARPA funds, that we're meeting and checking, what do I want to say? Crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, right? So I just want to ensure that. So I think that's the next step, Dave. I think we're right there. I think we're doing everything we should be. And at the same time, I think you guys, I welcome, like, we need suggestions. Linda, you made some great suggestions. Dave, love the suggestions of adding LED lighting. You know, Vernon, I think you offer a really interesting point. Maybe we could even work with Lens to kind of try to assess some of the cost savings from in Christianary from eliminating the pool, and what could that do for the scope that we've got to work with, the footprint. Maybe we can even make it bigger and better than we originally planned for. So I'm all on board for that.
You know,
And I also think the mayor should chime in too, you know, and Chris Schuer. I mean, those are the facilities utilized by all, but the pool hasn't been open the last couple of years, so.
and I think, you know, what I'd like to hear, I guess from Chris's end is, you know, the pool's been there a long time. I mean, it was there, I mean, it was built in the 70s, wasn't it? Or 80s anyway.
Yes, 70s.
It'd been around a while when I was a young kid. And the only thing that makes me hold on to it all is that I learned to swim there and stuff. But I get that it is underutilized. It still looks basically like it did when I was a child. But being that it's aged, you know, do we understand what it's like underground? And, you know, in my time here, we haven't really had to put any money into it. But does that mean there's not, you know, in 10 years, an impending major overhaul needed to that pool? And if there is, that may answer our question. I would think, you know, there's people in the city that work on that facility that probably have an idea.
I think maybe that's a good place to start, is how bad is it?
Yeah.
Can we get an assessment of that?
Can I just add?
Yeah.
I talked to Chris and Mayor, and they both told me about, you have to take in, remember, we took away the diving board, we filled up the part that you dove into. The other thing to keep in mind is, other than the aging machinery, is also there's a pressure concern between the pressure in the river and the pressure in the pool, and they're constantly having to watch that. So there's a lot of things that kind of make you think, is
Yeah, it may look
safe?
better on the surface than,
Right.
than we even imagine. And I think, you know, if we ask the question, it may be more opportunity to say goodbye to the pool. I hate to say it, but that just, you know,
When it comes to the chemicals, because I used to purify water, when you look at chlorine alone, I'll guarantee you we're spending in the thousands.
Oh, yeah.
For just chlorine.
And Chris can give you those figures.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of anxious. Chris has he shown, you know, interest in this, John, as far as,
Very much.
yeah.
Yeah, very much. I mean, he you know, in the brief conversation we had, he recognizes the game changer this is to activate that space. You know, I think he already started commenting. He's done a great job running the facility, and he already started rattling off like all these ideas that they could use with the rec center during the summer. What's going, you know, to do things inside, right? While things are going on outside, and you know. On initial view, we were thinking, well, you know, could we reactivate the pool space, right? So if the splash pad is kind of a little busy, you know, if we threw some slides going into the pool, would that be a benefit? But I think the number one question is how bad is the condition of the pool, and you know, the components, the infrastructure of it. And I think it would be worthwhile to have someone, whether it's a consultant, someone has to specialize and be able to tell us the condition of all of that. Is it gonna, like you said, is it a ticking time bomb? And, you know, in which case.
My gut tells me yes, just from the age, you know, and then you hear tidbits of pieces that have been around for a long time, you know. Things get that old, you can be as good as you want.
Right.
You only duct tape so many times, you know.
No, I know it.
Good, okay. We got lots of notes here, so I will give hopefully some answers and get you guys some answers, and I'll follow up with you in a week or two. Anything else? All right, thank you guys so much for your time on this. Super exciting. Let's see, any committee reports, Tiffany? All right, then I'll make a motion to adjourn. Could I get a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Witt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Okay, does it matter which one? Okay, I'm going to call to order the Committee of Youth and Rec for March 3rd, 2022. Let the record show all the members are present except for Alderman Gonzalez. Any unfinished business, I don't think so. And your referrals, not really. And the one thing, the review of recreational areas, what I thought I would do, and I thought about this for a while, even before I put this together, is just for all of us to get a baseline and get all of us on the same page. Because, you know, I live in Ward 1, and what people do in Ward 1 is totally different from what people do in Ward 7. You know, we all have different areas that we can go to. So what I did is I put a map together. I got the map from upstairs in the engineering office. And so this way we're all looking at the same thing. And the key is down in the left-hand corner. So the pink is privately owned. The green is public and private schools, and also like JCC. The blue is city-owned. So if you look at it in that context, the blue is definite revenue that comes into the city, but also the pink. I'm going to start in Ward 1. In your blue folder, I put a little notebook pad so you can take notes, or if you want to ask questions, jot them down. I gave you a marker, so if there's anything going through that I forgot, go ahead and mark it and let the rest of us know. And then on the right side, we're going to start with Ward 1. And what I did is I looked at everything that's in my ward. For instance, the Bartlett. It's a privately owned country club. It's on the corner of Euclid and Main Street. It consists of 45 acres. It has a pool, golf course, and tennis court. They hold golf tournaments, family reunions, wedding receptions, fundraisers, and a few other things that I didn't put on here. The high school kids do their golf there. But my point is, the Bartlett brings a ton of revenue into our city. When you come here for a wedding, we've had relatives come for bar mitzvahs. They spent the weekend, they stayed in hotels, they ate in our restaurants, they did some shopping. That happens every weekend when people come to the Bartlett. Fundraisers, people come in from out of town, or people just come in, say they're from the northern part of the county, they come for the day, they shop, they eat, then they go to the fundraiser. Of course, they may have dinner there. So I just wanted to highlight everything that brings recreation into the city, but also revenue. And so that's why I put the Bartlett there. Going down Boardmanville, obviously it was a grade school. It had a playground. The playground was taken out and moved over to the middle school. So now the Olean School District does have a soccer field there for the sort of the JV team, but I think it's the, I want to say, there's another name for it now. But anyways, it consists of about 3 acres. It has a parking lot. There's parking on Hamilton Street. They hold games there. So teams from out of town come to play them. And that, again, brings people into the city. They get a snack, they shop, and that's ongoing. Eastview Elementary is the other place in Ward 1. They have 2 playgrounds at their school. They have 4 soccer fields that are used by the younger kids. And that consists of about 5 acres. And the reason I'm adding the acreage is when we're all done, you'll be amazed how many acres we have in parks and privately owned areas, and particularly on the city side, how many acres of grass that our guys have to cut. So just keep those things in mind. So that's Ward 1. We don't have a public park in Ward 1. So if you look at the map, I tried to outline those things. And the only other thing that I might touch on before I go on to Ward 2 is the Olean Airport, which is outside of the city. But again, it's city-owned. It's the county and the city, but we take care of it. So we take care of the property. We do have revenue that comes in from up there. It is a recreational area. The one thing, as far as recreational, we have obviously planes that are renting out space in our hangars. We have, say, the fly-in breakfast we have each year. That brings revenue into the city. We sell fuel. I didn't get the acreage on that, but I will. We used to have the small planes, that group up there, but I think they've relocated outside. I don't think they're going to be up there. I can check on that, but the person that I talked to said that they relocated. But I just wanted to add the airport, because they do bring revenue into the city. So if you move on down to Ward 2, you'll see in Ward 2 we have, and I don't know if you guys kind of see the division, but at Alder and Seneca, that's kind of the corner of Ward 1, so anything to the right of that is Ward 2. So we do have a playground at Seneca Court. It's the housing program. Down the street at King Street, at the corner of King and, let's see, just want to make sure I'm saying it right. King and Seneca Avenue, there's a playground and it's 2.38 acres. The new equipment, I do believe, went in 2018. There's still remaining the old equipment, some wood monkey bars and climbing piece of equipment. We have a small basketball hoop, and I made a mistake. There's 2 softball backstops. I put 1. There's 2 sets of bleachers. We put in that walking trail that goes around the park, and we also have off-street parking there. When we used to use those, the softball area, when my girls were little, you would pull in and you would park at the far end of the park, and lots of folks would love to have that come back, and that would be taking some of the, the greenery away for our guys to cut the grass, put some millies in there. So it's safer for mom to pull in, and she has 3 little kiddos, and there's always one that's gonna open the door into traffic if they're parked on King Street. So I just think safety-wise, that would be a good idea to consider. Let's see, Warbets is the next area. And again, this is one of the busiest, and we just keep having more and more positive things happen there. It's on the corner of Front Street and East State. It's 9.28 acres. The new park equipment was put in between 2011 and 2012. There's 1 pavilion. We did upgrade the roof on that particular pavilion. We also did some floor work there. There's picnic tables and grilling sites. There's the walking trail goes through the center of Warbets Park. There's 2 basketball courts. There's a pool, a wading pool, and of course the rec center. And for those of you that are new, we just recently, a couple years ago, put over $3 million into renovations there. So keep that in mind. At our rec center, we have hockey, ice skating, bocce, youth programs, ice skating, roller derby, in when the ice is off. There are birthday accommodations. I think there's 2 or 3 rooms. Outside, there's the volleyball net, and I put in the future side of the water pad or park. So, and there's so many other things. I brought, maybe I didn't bring it, but I picked up the fall-winter brochure that Chris put together. And if you look at it, I'll bring it to you next week. It has, the one page is just it'll blow you away. There's Alfred, St. Bonaventure, and another team. That's their home court for hockey games. And we have, teams from all over, Canisius, Niagara, there's a Penn State team that comes, and they play their home games there. And I thought I brought it, but I guess I didn't. But you'll see, it's very impressive. And it's not something that happened overnight. That's been built up year after year after year. There's men's hockey leagues. There's the high school kids play there. So it just goes on and on. The other thing that happens at the rec center are community events, like the home show. They're going to have the health and fitness show coming up shortly. And people, the reunion, sometimes they host part of their reunion, class reunion events there. So that's just a few of the things that happen at Warbets Park. Going across the street, obviously going through the tunnel. Bradford Stadium, within the last 10 years, has had a huge transformation. We took down that ugly tin, fence that was up and put up a beautiful fence. It's at the corner of East State and Front. It's 5.39 acres. Let's see. There's seating for 4,000, there's a concession stand and restrooms, there's 2 dugouts. We have football, we have baseball, the Oilers are gonna be coming back this summer. Softball, they do the City Cup there. There's soccer playoffs that go on there. In the past, we've had the 4th of July. We've also had concerts, but we haven't had any lately. So there's a lot going on in Bradner Stadium, and we've done a lot of work there. And it's really, you know, it really shows. We also have a bandstand off to the side.
Does, Linda, can I
Sure.
stop you for a second? Maybe you guys know, I haven't gotten into Bradner Stadium much since I've been on the council, but I'm curious, does that facility fall under Chris Schweri's work, or is that kind of out there a little in left field? Because I just, you know, with COVID sporting event, it seems like football doesn't happen there much. Baseball hasn't happened, so I haven't seen, you know, a whole lot going on there. The high school football, I believe, is what I've seen, you know, the last, when it got kind of opened back up, but it's a stadium. I just feel like there could be more done there
Right?
than what I've seen in the last five years.
Yep. Well, I talked to the mayor, and the Oilers are gonna be playing this year. And each summer, the last 2 summers, and COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in a lot of things, but the City Cup has been held there because Marcus, they took away the lights, so that's why they play there. The soccer playoffs this past year, I know Portville played there, our teams have played there, just because it holds more people. So there have been events there, but you're right, it's really slowed down. I don't think we've had a concert there in years. And I know we didn't have our 4th of July last year. I know, Beach Boys, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last,
Decades.
I'm sure there was a concert last, well, it's
Oh,
probably
there
been 10
was.
years, but
I
when
went to it.
the motorcycle
What
rally,
was it
I
called?
went to, yeah,
Like the Rapper or something?
I went.
well, I know Rally Valley used to have some concerts there too, but
Yeah.
it's probably approaching 10 years since they've been.
Yeah, they went to Allegheny.
I think they've totally dissolved for now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like, I hope, well, maybe it's just been the COVID years that have lost sight of it, but I would like to see that space I feel like it should be used for more than football and baseball.
No.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people who use it that don't like it getting torn up, is what they'll say, but to me, we put the money into fixing it for them when we tear it up, so that we can use it.
Second?
And I was gonna say that, you know, since it's not under Chris's purview, it seems like we need somebody to market the space. Because there were concerts there in the past, and there's other things that I think I'm in agreement with you, that we have this great space, but the majority of the time it sits empty. And how can we, you know.
And I'm all for, the sports teams that need it, but, schedule it and pack it. That's what a place like that should do, I think.
Jack?
It's something that, just kind of popped into my head, and I don't know, I mean, ultimately the mayor is the chief administrator, and I don't know what his thoughts would be on something like this, but you bring up really valid points, and, right now, I think Chris's domain is really based on recreation, and most communities have park and rec combined, right? And maybe, because I want to say parks are under DPW, maybe that's an opportunity, and I don't want to make decisions for Bill, I'd be interested to know his thoughts, but maybe we look at Park and Rec and Bradner Stadium being a part of that and giving it under its own umbrella for someone, who's going to put some time into marketing and at the facilities and get usage out of it. So I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that's something that, Chris has his hands full, just with the parks, he does the park system, he does the youth program, the rec alone keeps you busy. Lincoln Park, he does the bands, the concerts in the summer, so he does a lot at the senior center that he helps schedule, so he's got a pretty, full plate, so maybe someone, I don't know, in the park system, or someone that could step up and, like you said, actually try to market it more.
I was surprised, Linda, because when I asked a question last year sometime, they said that the parks fell under DPW. And it's like, when I was here years ago, it was always Parks and Rec, and Dave Foreman was the director for Parks and Rec. And I don't know how that, from 1995 till now, I don't know who made that change.
Yeah, and it does, it changes, and I think with each mayor, either they try to consolidate or separate, but I think those are all good questions, and maybe when we talk to the mayor when he gets back, maybe we can do something. Okay, so if you look on the map, obviously the biggest section of blue is Warvetts, Bradner, and then next is Fornes. I was telling Alderman Crawford, if you go over and go along the fence at Bradner and go to where there's a white fence area that belongs to Country Fair, there's a little walkway that you can take a sidewalk that goes down behind Country Fair and then it walks towards Fornes. Back in 2017, we had applied for a grant, and I don't know, John, do you remember that trail we were thinking of? We got part of the money, but then the council decided not to include it in the budget. But I was looking at the aerial up in Carrie's office the other day, and I was asking her if we could downsize that project and just finish a walkway so you could cross the street from Warvetts, come over, go right down that sidewalk down into Fornes, and then all three of those complexes, it could be a recreational complex. And once, like say when we get our splash pad in, just pulling people to all three, if there's events going on, they can go from one to the other and it's all connected. To me, that's something that would be easier to market instead of just one here and one there. So, but I just wanted to make sure I put it in yellow. I drew the line just outside of Bradner and then turn, and then it goes right to the end of Hoop Street. And just make that walkway go right down into Fornes, and then you connect it, and you don't have to. I think the project that we were thinking of was like $200,000 and some to do that, and then make it go down by the pond, go around the pond, and come back. That's a lot of money, but we could do this, and it'd be less expensive. So the next area in Ward 2, and I have to say Ward 2 has the bulk of the parks and things and the most activity. Hoop Street, or Fornes Park, it's, you go down Roland, but it's Hoop Street and East State Street. It's 43.06 acres. There are 10 baseball, softball fields. Field 1, the kickball league, which used to be in Marcus until they took the lights away. And now they moved down and they use field 1 for kickball, and that's growing over time. Fields 1 and 1, 8, and 9 are softball fields, and they would like to get field 10 up and running so they could add more leagues. Field 2 is a farm league, baseball league, and they also use that for midget football. Fields 3 through 7 are little league fields. I think it's field 6 is where they have the grandstand. They have a batting cage, where you hit. And they also have, all the fields, by the way, have bleachers. But they also have a concession stand, but it's just for them. It's not open for any of the other leagues. Field 10 is not open. It's right now it's not used, but that's the one that they're talking of getting something done. There are 2 small playgrounds. There's a pond where we have the fishing derby, and they do stock it. There's 2 pavilions. They have tables and grills. There's 1 room restroom area. Again, there's bleachers, and there's 3 different designated parking areas. So Fornes is really a big place. If you ever get a chance in the summer, especially in the evenings, there's probably a couple hundred people down there for these softball games when each field is being used. So that's just something to keep in mind. And if you move on past Fornes, you'll see the pink. It's right by the number 2. That's Good Times. And then just behind Good Times is the Olean Girls Softball Complex. That's privately owned by Dennis Peterson. It has everything from T-ball up to 13-year-olds. It has 4 softball fields. All of them have dugouts. It has concession stand. It has restrooms, and each field has bleachers. And between Good Times and Olean City, girls softball, they do bring in revenue. Teams from different places come. Good Times, I'm not sure how much is going to be open this summer. I'm hoping at least the putt-putt golf is open. I know they took their equipment away from the batting cages, so that's gone. But I just think, again, those 2 entities bring revenue into the city, as does the other 3. The only other thing that I would point out in Ward 2, if you look just below Ward 2 and go all the way to the city line, and if you take your yellow marker, you can follow Allegheny River. That, we use it for canoeing, we use it for kayaking. Back when I think it was Mayor Quinlan, we had a river regatta, and people would get in Portville, and they came down through, and we have everything from canoes, rowboats, kayaks, and even paddle boats for that river regatta. And the whole weekend was just crazy. It was just wonderful. There were just people that came, and they just wanted to have fun. The other thing with the Allegheny River, if you look where, let's see, Forness up to Bradner, I highlighted that because that's where a lot of people fish. Whenever you're walking by, crossing East State Bridge, there's always someone down there fishing. And actually, when you look in the county brochure for Cattaraugus County, they mention the fishing here in Allegheny at that section of Allegheny River. So what I wanted to do is just cover Ward 1 and 2 tonight, and then in 2 weeks I'll do 3 and 4, and then we'll finish up the next 2 weeks with 5, 6, and 7. I just want you to kind of get an idea of what we have in Olean. When people say there's nothing to do, they don't look very hard, because there's tons of things to do. And again, think of all the revenue that these private entities, our entities, publicly owned entities, and school bring into our area. I'm sorry, I thought I grabbed the programs, but you'll be amazed at how many teams come here to play hockey, with the college at St. Bonaventure and Venture University. And again, that's something that Chris has really built up. Alderman Crawford?
Thanks. I believe St. Bonaventure just won an upstate New York hockey title. So their team did phenomenal, did really well. Quick question, with the Good Times softball field, like when Good Times was shut down last year, so those are private fields, so if Good Times is shut down, nobody can use those fields, unlike public fields, or do they allow people to use those fields?
No, actually, there's Good Times, and then there's the girls softball complex. It's 2 different owners.
Oh, those are 2, who owns the girls softball complex?
Dennis Peterson.
Okay.
And they put a lot of money into there. They, like I said, they have dugouts, they have a concession stand, they have restrooms, they have their parking, and they're very, if you're playing softball, the beer leagues, you don't go to their restrooms. They're off limits. So they're very, very sensitive to their concession bathrooms. It'll be locked. So those are just those 2 wards. And I just think, just going ward by ward and just showing, all of us getting that idea of what's out there. The only other thing, on the other side, the left-hand side of your packet, there's 3 sheets, and this just gives a description. For instance, last year we had talked to them about possibly doing concession and restrooms in Forness for the softball league. There's that piece. The other, and it's going to come up in finance, is putting aside that $50,000 to help secure some grant monies through the Ralph Wilson grants. It has field lighting, is approximately 50 to 75,000 per field. There's only one more field that we need, and that's 10. The home plate, they've already fixed in-house, at least 2 of them. And then it has the concession stand there. The press box, it's similar to Marcus Field, and that would be $400 to $500. Finish the fencing at field 8. Put the bumper, the padded part on top. And then the updating and, skinning the infield, the batter's box, that's all in-house stuff that they've been meeting with Mayor Alio and Director Ring on that. And then the crushed clay mixed infields, they also talked about that, and we're going to help with that part. And then the last page kind of gives you an oversight of the revenue. And if you look at it, the number of leagues, so you have half of the teams come from Pennsylvania or other towns. On Wednesday, Fridays, it's the men's bar league. There's 12 teams, which is 180 players. On Tuesday is the wooden bat league. There's 12 teams, it's 180 players. And then Monday, Thursday are the women's bar leagues, which is 15 teams, and they want to build that. And that's about 225 players. So in the process of bringing back the Sunday, they're in the process of bringing back the Sunday co-ed league. The revenue, and this is just something that they put together, the baseline estimate is maybe $20 per person. So if you have 6 games, 5 nights a week, you have 20 players, maybe 30 spectators, and they do get a lot of spectators. The parking, people actually park on the grass down there, and they really shouldn't, but they do. They overflow into the Peterson parking also. There's 50, so that's 50 people per game, 300 people per day, times $20 is $6,000. You times that times 5 days, that's $30,000. And then at tournaments, it's even more than that. And I'm sure Chris could probably give us an idea of those figures. But that's just a little information on some of these,
Quick question.
this information. Yes, sir.
Is that $20
A
does
person.
the city pay, they have to pay the city to play in the league? That's $20 a person to the city, or?
No, that's $20 that they spend in the city. when
Oh, they
come
spend,
to games.
oh,
But these leagues do pay to use those fields, and they do pay to have a porta-john. So
What-
they do pay a fee.
what is the revenue that the city collects? Just out of curiosity, do we know what that,
I don't have that, but I can get that for you.
yeah,
But I know
curiosity?
they have to rent the porta-johns, and they pay a fee to use the fields. They were paying a gentleman so much per game because they have to, I don't know what it's called, you drag the fields. And they had an individual do that because the city didn't want to do that.
That's not in our service.
Right, so,
Do they
it's
pay-
interesting.
For the entire season, do you know, for the use of it? So it's a season-based fee that they pay to the
Right.
city? Okay.
Right. So that's, I wanted to stop there because I didn't want to throw too much at you. But those are just 2 wards. And like I said, Ward 2 has the bulk of the activity between the rec center and Bradner. Hopefully we can get that moving, and Fornes.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need Fornes has. I would be interested to know, between different leagues, do they all pay?
Yes.
Does anybody just go down there and use it?
Oh, no, they all.
Where do we see that revenue? Are those funds up to date? Are the fees up to date? We're going to put money into the place and get it back. Are we getting appropriate fees, or are they 1989 fees? I think we need to see that. Make sure that, I believe it needs investment, but at the same time, we don't want to invest and not, if there's revenue to be made,
Mhm.
so that we can continue keeping the place up to date or continually put into it.
Right.
Absolutely, because a lot of those people, like Linda said, are people that come in from outside the city to use that facility. And it has to be self-sustainable. So, if we invest money into it, we should expect to have some revenue come back. I don't know what the fees are or when that was last adjusted, or, Oh, thank you. Lens.
He's gonna
Yeah,
fall
we
asleep
are in
over
the
there.
process of looking at all the fees of the city
Yep.
and see where we could bring some more revenue. Like some of the fees for the rec center hasn't changed in like 20 years.
Yep.
So John, Chris and I, we're going through the fees right now. We'll present those to you when we do your budget meeting.
So next week we'll get some more insight into that. Right.
And I think the person to get the numbers from is Terry Bella, because she collects all the fees. And they also pay a separate fee for the city cup. The teams they get sponsors, and they pay that to the city. So there's a lot of generated revenue there. I know when we go back to Bradner, obviously it's underutilized, but a lot of the folks that use Bradner, if they're high school teams, I don't think they pay anything. I think when the Oilers started out, we didn't charge them much of anything the first few years. I don't know what we're
I
charging
mean, I
now.
think they had a lot to do with funding the initial, revitalization of that, of Bradner's, that may have been, or the Oilers.
No,
No?
no, they had nothing to do with it.
Oh, I,
Brian O'Connell put that together, and he used his own money
oh,
to
really?
get them up and running. And then they had people in the community that actually had the players stay with them, or the first couple of years, they actually used the dorms at Bonaventure. So it was kind of a community effort, and then we took turns, different people. Like 1 week, I would buy the groceries for these kids, the next week someone else would, and we kind of spread it out. So it was kind of a, a stitched together effort, but it worked. So now that they're up and they're established, it'll be interesting to see how much we charge if we use. But there's a lot of our facilities, we don't take in that much, especially Bradner, because it's high school.
Mhm.
And it depends on if they line the field or if we line the field, it's usually us. And there's a lot of costs associated to this. And I think the mayor and probably Bob and Parks, what they do is there's, the lights, that's ours. To keep the concession stand and the restrooms going, that's us. We also have an individual, at least one, that is there from the beginning of the game to the end to turn on the lights, turn off the lights, and start picking up. So a lot of that revenue is just to pay for our staff.
Mhm.
So I think we tried this a few years ago, looking at the fees, and Lens is right. Some of them haven't been touched for years, and I think there were people on the council that just didn't want to upset anybody. But it's like we can't give our services out free. We have to look at those fees, and we have to
No, I
adjust
mean,
them.
to me, the direct reflection of that is the state that we're in,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You don't collect fees and make money, you don't put it into it, and you end up, yeah, it was nice 40 years ago, but
Yeah.
now it's worn.
Yeah. But yet you still have to pay for the staff
Mhm.
to do what they do, and to cut the grass, line the fields, and do all the other things they do. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I do believe that, when we talk about the leagues, I do believe that they do spend money locally. Because I have friends who play and they go out to local establishments, almost all of them, afterwards. So I think, John, one of the things that you've talked about is how do we bring more people in? And I think that is, and I know that we do have to look at revenue and see how much each league pays, because I think absolutely, as you've said, and then look at, kind of like the splash pad, self-sustaining, right? But how do we bring people in then that utilize, that go downtown shopping and go to Angie's and go to our other restaurants and stuff. So I think that's the value in addition to the cost they pay per field, or per season, I guess I would say.
And to add to that, different bars are their sponsors. And what the girls do is they feel they have to go to those sponsors' establishments after the game in a way to thank them, but they still are spending money. So it's kind of, one take care of the other, and they support them, because then they want them to be their sponsor next year. So, and these leagues have been going on for years, but it's, there is revenue there, but I agree with Jason, we really need to look at
And
the
there's
structure.
probably, you know, if you look at some of the cities nearby that have newer fields, typical, and even, I think it's done in Bradner's a little bit, but, you sell advertising, billboards and things that are tagged along the fences and such. I don't think there's any of that going on in Florence anymore. There might have been a little bit when I was a kid, but, I think it's pretty empty as far as any advertising down there, but, and you know, when you get to that, it may be staff, you know, if that park's under Chris and his group's tapped out on staff, you know, it's a hard thing to look at, but with a budget, that may mean that we need more personnel in that department. And you have to do it if it's gonna change things, right? Because what we've got, people can only do so much.
I was just gonna ask if anybody knew, the usage of, or I should say the plans, from the Olean School District. Are they, and I assume they don't use these facilities, they may use Bradner Stadium. Are they still moving forward with the big capital project there?
I haven't heard, but I think COVID kind of slowed
I mean,
everything down.
they had a massive capital project scheduled, and I didn't know if they were gonna put in their own football turf field and this, that, and that. I think it might just behoove us to reach out and just find out what they've got going on too, but.
Going back to Bradner, the ads you see around the fence inside, those are for the Oilers. They do that every year. They get sponsors, and that's how they help offset the cost.
Just one last question. You're talking about Bradner not being used, and one of the softball teams wants us to spend $50,000 to $70,000 for lighting. Can they instead use Bradner's if they have night games and save $50,000 to $70,000?
But when they're doing, the only time they use Bradner is for the City Cup, and that's at the end of the season. So I think when they start their season, I think the high school is still using for like soccer and other things. I'll check into that for you, but,
I mean, I don't mind spending the $50,000 if they need lighting and they're gonna, you know, rent it, and the city's gonna get revenue.
right.
But it just like it's a duplicate of services. We got a high-class stadium that's probably much better than football or
Yeah.
softball field. I mean, why wouldn't they rather use the stadium? They got bleachers there.
Oh, I think they'd love to, but again, I think it's a scheduling thing. And I think if we check with Chris Kenyon or some of the other people that know the fields, they could tell you it's a scheduling thing. But no, I'm all for it. I think personally, I think the stadium's nicer to sit. They would have restrooms, they would have dugouts, you know, and it's just upgraded. So for me, it'd be a perfect place to hold more games. The other thing they want to do, the men and the women, they've held back growing their league because, you know, they've lost Marcus Field because of the lighting and they can't use 10. So if they could get those going, we could bring even more revenue into the city by generating more interest and adding more teams to the league. So those are just some things to think about. And I wanted to give you that information. So in 2 weeks, we'll do Ward 3 and Ward 4. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, the ones that we covered tonight, just send me an email. And I think, as far as parks, those were the 2 items that I wanted to discuss. We don't have any committee reports. So I'll make a motion to adjourn. In a second.
Second.
Paul, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Okay, now we're gonna go into finance. So let the record show that all are in attendance for finance except for Olean Gonzalez. And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 15th. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I don't believe we have any unfinished business. New referrals and consideration. I put on the 50,000 funding commitment for Forness Park because we did talk about this last year and everybody got busy and Carrie started putting things together, but we need our engineer, whether Dave Crandall or whoever's still here, to put together the numbers, I don't know, the dimensions or something. She needs that to put in for a grant. So I'm asking to look into where we could get the $50,000 to put aside in the capital fund to help support some of the upgrades down at Performance Park. And I would point out a lot of the repairs and updates we can do in-house. And the mayor's aware of that. He has been meeting with folks from the men and the women's softball league. So that's ongoing. But this $50,000 would go towards like the lights and other things that Carrie would be working on to try to get a grant. So with that being said, I guess I would throw it out to you. Would that be something that you would want to take out of contingency, or would that be something, since it's a one-time expenditure, to take out of the ARPA funds? Alderman Crawford.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, first of all, you know, I know we talked about it, it seems like forever ago now, and I guess I would like to suggest that we get an update from Carrie Kerper. I mean, this was, I don't know if there was a specific grant that she had in mind at the time, or if there's an ongoing grant, what the upgrades that are being proposed. I mean, I just would hate to just set aside money from a kind of a blanket perspective. I would just like to know more about what are those upgrades. Is it inclusive of a, you know, at one time we heard a new playground. Was the playground, is it playground? I heard talks about a bathroom, talks about lights, which I did talk to Bill a little bit about, and he said it would be more like about $200,000 to $250,000 to put lights on some of the fields, per field. So I guess I would like to know what is the scope of the project that we're setting money aside for. And if Carrie could give us an idea, and again, if it's just an ongoing, we can just reach out to Ralph Wilson, say, hey, we have this proposal, you know, or is it a specific grant, there's a timeline to it, I just would feel more comfortable. Additionally, I thought we also wanted to kind of prioritize, I mean, I think you did a great job here, Linda. I kind of thought maybe we would want to go through all the parks. I thought that was kind of the point, what we talked about a couple weeks ago, was to hear about all the different parks needs, and you know, where we could really best harness and leverage our funding at this time. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, in response, we did talk about this last year, and Carrie was here, and I was hoping she'd be here tonight, but I have no problem waiting for Carrie. One of the grants that this would leverage is the Ralph Wilson grant. And the softball team's not asking for lights at every field. There are lights down there. They're just talking about that field that they can't use. So it's not every field. So it's not going to be 250.
That was the quote for one field that I got, not 75,000. It was 200 to 250,000. That's what the mayor told me. But I shouldn't.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear some. I'd like to hear some updated numbers and
Yeah, and as Bob was here, he could probably give us a better idea. So,
Sure.
But this is the number that we talked about last year. So we've already put it off for a year, but that's fine. And the reason I brought it up tonight, because we did cover Forness, is Forness is a place that brings in revenue. And I think we have to support the parks that bring in revenue. You know, if we encourage more people to use it, it's going to bring more revenue. It's just like the rec center, or it's just like putting the splash pad in. It's to bring in revenue. I'm not proposing to put lights in a park that doesn't have a baseball field. You know, I'm not proposing adding something to Mignano Park or any other park that they don't bring in revenue. They're neighborhood parks. They're not supposed to bring in revenue. So this is the park that we talked about last year, and I will have Carrie put together. She probably has it already, but she was waiting for some engineering numbers that she's still waiting for. So as soon as we have her come and walk you through it, that's fine.
Let me interject a little bit here. I mean, I'm all for work getting done at Forness. I think it's way behind in getting some investment. I've been holding off a little bit because I've been on the council now since I started, I've been hearing about a project at Forest that has always sounded fairly sizable. But, and like everything else we do, I thought that something was already in the works and it was gonna show up here, for us to see. I've heard about this trail and the bathrooms but nothing ever came, and I just thought it was, not time yet. So I'm curious, like, was there anything real ever, on
Again.
paper or?
The one thing holding it up is the engineering.
Okay,
And when Carrie comes, she can walk you through that,
okay.
okay?
Yeah, because I thought
Oh, I don't blame you.
that there was something already in the works
Yeah. No,
for 2 years, and that I was just not in the crowd to be part of that. So I'm looking forward to something.
And I guess I would also, those are some great numbers that were shared earlier. And if that's all, that's already existing numbers of revenue being brought into the city. So my question is, if we commit to investing in the park, how much more revenue will be brought in? Because what we have there is already bringing in $30,000 into our community weekly. So by doing upgrades, I guess, are they, is it gonna be used 7 days a week? I just would like to, what is the cost benefit analysis of it, too, I think, would be meaningful. Otherwise, I do totally agree with what Dave brought up. We've got a $1 million facility sitting over there at Bradford Stadium that has some beautiful lights. I can't accept that it's just a scheduling problem. That's not good use of taxpayer money, right? So let's get a scheduler on board to figure out how to let people play softball when the Oilers aren't playing there, right? Why not use the facilities that we already have rather than, necessarily, I guess I would like to just see every avenue explored.
Mhm. And like I said, I think they'd be thrilled to play there. It's never been offered to them except for the City Cup. And evidently that's the end of the season, and that's when it's available. Well, the other thing you have to keep in mind is the last 2 years, the Oilers haven't played because of COVID. So they're coming back this year. So I don't schedule. I'm just telling you that they've never been offered it. They've been pushed, they're down in Forest, and they're fine with that.
Yeah.
You took away the lights at Marcus. They
Why
didn't
did you
play
take
there. They were gone before you went out
Yeah.
of the council. So it's all about prioritizing where the money's gonna come from.
Agreed.
And that's the bottom line.
Well, maybe, not to interrupt you, just for a second, looking at the schedule for the budget meetings, it looks like March 15th is DPW, and looks like Parks, for some reason, calls it DPW. But maybe we can have, or somebody to get all of Bob, because I think he told me he was going to be working Wednesdays and Saturday nights, I thought, part-time for a couple months.
Well, I just assumed he was gonna be here for the budget. Is he not gonna do the DPW part?
That would be the mayor. That would be the mayor's call.
Okay.
The mayor coordinates with his staff who's going to present. So I don't know if Bob is going to present, or if Brad, or the mayor. I don't.
I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think the last time I spoke with him, he said that he would ask Bob to see who could be here.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's,
But we can check with them on the engineering part of this.
Sure.
But moving on, and I will get with Carrie so she can get you that
I
information.
don't want you to move on yet. I had some comments I wanted to add in here.
Oh, that's okay.
First, I'm definitely for, I've stated this before, I want to see all the parks get upgraded, plain and simple. I think it's a great investment for our community. I think it's something that we could use in this area. No exclusions. I think all of the parks need upgrading, including the little utilized ones that are on the outskirts of the city. But again, as far as the funding on what the upgrades were going to be, I would like to know more detail, and you've already said that Carrie would hopefully present that information to us. So the good, the bad, the ugly. The Forness figures, it had to be pre-COVID. What little I do in this city, I go to the parks. I'm always on my bike, I'm always walking, I'm always doing something in the summer. I kayak this river all the time. And Forness, I haven't seen anyone there in the past couple of years, really, not a whole lot of people. So I'm gonna say those were pre-COVID figures, so it would be nice, as John said, if that was the case prior to, with a rundown field, it would be even more revenue if we upgrade it. So I would love to see it upgraded. I would love to see more revenue coming to the city. As far as Bradner Stadium and the scheduling issue, this is where the ugly comes in. Who's paying? If you have someone that's paying to use the stadium, to me, they would get first in line over someone who's not, regardless of the organization. So the object is for us to make revenue for the city. So if you're not paying and you're just getting a freebie to use the stadium, then you're last in scheduling, the way I see it. So, I hate to be blunt about that, but there's can't do everything for free. As Alderman Pannis said, you can't do it for free. So we have to make money on it in order to be able to justify the upgrades and such. So that was it.
Oh, and those are great questions. The person that I will check with is Terry Belli. She schedules and she takes the rental fees for Bradner. And just to get you an idea of who's using it, who's paying. And back to the softball, they had a busy season last year. I was there for almost every game. The girls at Peterson Field were packed. The Little League was busy, even during COVID because it was outside. So they have been used over the years.
I've seen I've heard of the little girls field there being open, the private one, yeah.
It gets a lot of use, but the softball, the men's and women's in Furnace, they were there all last year. So they are using the fields and they are paying us. Just keep that in mind. They're paying. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. What I did before we adjourn, I just handed out, this is the executive budget from the governor, and I just wanted to point out just a couple of things. For instance, the very first one is AIM funding. That hasn't been actually increased, connected with inflation since 2009. And this year, she's finally, trying to increase it. But if you read through, there's a lot of really good stuff here that can help us. The water and sewer infrastructure funding. The one thing that a lot of municipalities were very upset with is the accessory dwelling units. And this comes from New York City, but they wanted to make it for everybody. And we all said no. What this would do, if you had, say, your house, and you wanted to build a small little house behind you and rent it out, and you didn't have to go by codes, get it approved, anything. That's what their suggestion was. And people in the room were like, are you kidding? Why do we have codes? Why do we have the planning board? Why do we have zoning? And so Nikon said, that's pull it because we can't support that. But I found that interesting, just reading through them. Some of the other really important ones, let's see, the Connect the Broadband, they want to do more with that, put more money into it. But you can just take on your own and read through these. They want to put sales tax on vacation rentals. So if you have you rent out your home or something, there would be a sales tax on that. Code enforcement penalties. They want to make sure that municipalities are doing and at least going to the lowest standard, and some municipalities aren't. So they want to look into more of those problems. And just, if you keep going, there's a lot of really good stuff, but it would help us. Cybersecurity, or the person that presented it was Barb. She's one of the Nikon attorneys. There's money set aside in this, it's going to be set aside in the state to help municipalities, again, with cybersecurity. The people from Nikon also told us that they can help municipalities if they're having issues with that. Small business assistance. Due to COVID, they wanted to have tax credits for them. Just a lot of information there. To-go drinks, remember last year or two, if you went to, say, Union Whiskey, and you wanted your drink to go, and we had to put something special to do that, they want to continue that, because they thought that was really successful. The one on the bottom of page 5, everybody was happy about that, the civil service testing, to, bring it up to date. So many times people will tell you they took a civil service test and it had nothing to do with the job they applied to. So they want to fix that. And, you know, the folks from NICOM said it's a pretty aggressive executive budget, but it has to go through the Senate and the Assembly yet. So some of this might stay and some of it might go. But I just wanted you to be aware of, you know, what's going on in the state and what's going to impact us. The other handout I gave you is the ARPA progress report. It's this one. And if you read through it, there's a lot of websites that will give you kind of the latest. They've really taken away a lot of the restrictions. We fall under the 10 million, so we fall under the lost revenue part, and ours is less restrictive, but it gives you a lot of really good information here, so if you have time to just read through it and check out some of these websites. There's one, I thought I marked it, but you can go on and it gives you like what municipalities have done so far, about 60 ideas, and they're really interesting what they've come up with. The one that a lot of people focused on when Barb was going through this, she's the attorney that's really become a specialist on this. So if you ever have any questions, she's the one to talk to. Was reimbursing your IT department because of COVID, you know, having to purchase and put in place your Zoom equipment and being able to meet that way. But also, several municipalities actually put in new websites, which kind of clicked because that's what we did. But all those things are reimbursable out of your ARP funding. And a gentleman, I think he was from, he wasn't from East Aurora, but he was up from that direction. He said, you know, when it comes budget time, instead of trying to slash everything, this could be a supplement to where you don't have to raise the amount you need for your IT, but reimburse them for what they've spent, and then that'll help your budget time. So those are just a few things we talked about that I found really interesting, and some of the folks have really come up with some great ideas. The big thing is you want to use your ARPA funds on things that are one-time expenditures, and I think Len's, he's up to date, he knows, and you do have to do filings, and again, Len knows exactly when those are. Once you pick, like say a capital project, as soon as you commit to that, there's not really a deadline, you just have to, on an annual basis, keep them up to date what you're doing. Okay, so those are just a few ideas they gave us, and I just thought I would share them with you tonight. Any questions on that?
I was gonna say, I spent a couple of days reading that literature and on the website mentioned, and I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I did not know we were gonna discuss that tonight. So I guess I'll bring it up in a future meeting, but there were some interesting things, as you mentioned, that were in there that I thought the city could look at. And I prefer the mayor be here anyway before I talk about that.
And
So,
he was there too.
yeah.
But I just think it's nice to have this because it has the websites you can go to,
Yep.
and it gives you a wealth of information, and they've changed. Like this has been updated from, I think it was April of last year, but it's been updated a couple times since then, where they've allowed more and more things to be accepted uses of the ARPA funds.
And I think the units that you were discussing earlier, those units I think were removed already, except for New York City.
Yeah,
I
they were
think it
pulled.
stayed on there for them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, and that would be like, you know, I have a field out back, I could just throw up a little, storage unit big enough for someone to sleep in, and I could rent it out. You know, I mean, they can do that in New York City, and get probably 12,000. But what the municipalities were concerned about is our zoning and our codes issues, and so he said no. So, yeah, they told us that it's gonna be cool. But,
Sounds like something that might work if you have a homeless problem.
I think that's what we're geared towards.
yeah,
Yeah.
in New York, and they're not gonna be free, so.
Right, well, I'm sure there's,
Maybe subsidize.
if you have some more places, you start adjusting prices.
I didn't see anything in here about cannabis. Was that brought up at all?
That was a separate session.
Uh,
Actually, my husband went with me, and being a physician, he found it interesting because he's the hospice physician, so he just wanted to see the use. And I think the mayor sat in on that one too. It was standing room only in that session. One of the things that they stressed, and I think I sent someone the link to reporting, if people are, say, having an event and you have to pay to get into the event, but it's not necessarily you're paying for, you know, a brownie or something, you know, having to do with pot, that there's certain things that are illegal. And what they do, if someone were to report that, that individual or that business can be on the future, they can't have a site in the future to sell it. They're banned from doing it because there are so many people screwing the law right now. You know, like they say they'll have, we're having this party, it's a $10 admission fee, but it's not for food, it's to offset the cost of paying for a bag of marijuana or a brownie or these jelly things that they're making nowadays. And they just want to get a handle on it, but those people will be banned from being able to be a dispenser in the future. So Gil told me it was a really interesting session, but it was probably the most attended session. So, but I just thought I would share that information with you guys. But again, check out the websites with this, it's really interesting.
Thanks for doing that work.
Yeah, and if anything else, nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.